Okay.
Hello, everyone. Uh, Welcome to episode 2 from season 2 of Dead Air Radio. I'm your host, Steve Fletch. I got my co-host, Mitch Hartman. Mitch, how's it
I'm
going?
here.
And then we have a guest, so it's not just me and Mitch rambling on about stuff. Mike Stein. Mike, how's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thanks
Awesome.
for letting me ramble with you guys.
Thanks for coming on. This is like and being punctual because I don't think ever from years of doing this stuff that I've ever had anybody come on early or on time. So
But
thank you for that.
it's only 5 o'clock here, so I'm even extra early.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. West Coast Mike has a different schedule than us.
Yeah, so punctual.
I remember when I was doing 500 Fahrenheit and I had vegan John from Killing Floor, and he made me quit doing it because he was either so late or just like, I'm like, all right, John, it's like been 45 minutes. Like, oh yeah, never mind. I can't come tonight. And he kept doing it, and I was like, all right, I'm done. I retire. But here we are back again. Do you know him? You live out in Oregon, right?
Yeah, and I've talked to him on Instagram, but we've never lined up. I think I don't get out much. I don't know. And I think last time we were talking, I know he goes to Hawaii a lot. Like he has a kid there or something. I don't know.
He has a kid. Yeah, he's.
I don't want to speak on somebody that I don't really know backstory.
Yeah, I don't know. He must be selling a lot of the his boards.
But yeah, we talked a little bit. I mean, his art's awesome, and it's like I feel like Killing Floor is in kind of a cool zone. You know?
Is it? Have you seen them in the wild out there?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Conversely, I've never seen a traffic board outside of my apartment.
Sounds about right. Because I never see Killing Floor out here.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's all. I remember like even being into stuff like that, and you come out, even going to the West Coast, and they're like, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah,
you know,
it's super funny.
It's
I mean,
the coolest shit.
Obviously, there's like little kind of local brands everywhere, but then there's even just things that hit hard in certain areas and they don't in other places. And speaking of like Silver Star era, I remember going back to Florida after I had lived in Philly, and people knew I was Philly just at my setup because I had like 60 millimeter wheels and an 8.5 or something. And they were like, "What the fuck?"
It's funny how that is. Like you can tell where people are from, or just by little things like that. Very cool. I never went that big on wheels.
Like
Mitch, do you ever have
regional.
the 60s?
Oh yeah, I had the Matt Reason 63 physics wheels.
Dang, I never went there.
I had every trope you could get of that era. I was
no dreads though.
No,
not the full kit.
I think I might have borderlined on that one. I had the hair hat beanie filled with long hair when I could still do that.
I never did. I missed out. Quim always made that look cool.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Matt and maybe Quim, Matt Rodriguez, these guys get a pass.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Legends. So, what got you into skating? Like, what was your draw to it?
I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like, literally, I think what sparked me was going into, it wasn't even a skate shop. It was like a sneaker store in the mall, but they had sports equipment. And its skateboard wall looked totally different than all the other sports equipment, It's like all the graphics really stood out, just like a, heavy metal album cover or something. And I think that's kind of what sparked me on it. Looking at like a Tony Hawk and a Billy Ruff and a Ross Cop and all that stuff. And it was also kind of like Back to the Future era. So it was trending 80s zeitgeist of getting a skateboard. And then maybe, a year or two after that, seeing like Thrasher and renting like some contest videos from the video store and kind of like seeing skateboarding.
Yeah.
So where was that? Where were you? Where did you grow up?
New Jersey, like
Okay.
Picklerville, New Jersey.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, and then I moved to Florida through high school, and then I lived in like Fort Myers, and actually grew up with like Alyssa Steamer, Matt Milligan, world's greatest curb skater, Abe Bethel. That was like my dude that I was seriously in a smelly station wagon with that dude every day after school for a couple years. And then he quit skating. Like he was already sponsored and stuff. And we were, you know, for me, who's not very good at skating, but loves it so much, I was like, dude, he's so good. He's sponsored. Why would you quit? You know? But, and then a few years later, he started back up and now he's better than ever somehow.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah, it's pretty unfair, actually.
My friends who are into curbs, we have a little group chat, and I sent something of him because I saw this. I was like, "Whoa, this is insane!" And they were like, "Oh, well, he's too good at this," and it was funny. But I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, he's like too good."
I mean,
watch this.
I hate to say it, but it's like I almost feel like. I mean, I know I was probably better when I was 18, but he was. The clips that he posts are all curb skating. And back when we used to skate together, I'd see him skate stairs and ledges and flat ground and everything. So he seemed more well-rounded. Like, all his clips are very, like, curb. But I guess you got to give the people what they want.
Yeah, especially when you're that good at it.
Yeah. No, it's just sick to see because like they did that Jenkum piece and he's skating like a sunbank in Florida, which is literally like the spots that we used to skate, you know, just those kind of like little waxed up islands and stuff. So yeah, it's kind of cool. That's like his natural habitat.
Comes around full circle.
But yeah, so anyway, I
you moved to
lived
Philly
in Florida through high school and then moved back to Philly for art school. And then that's kind of when I started meeting everybody and, you know, going and skating love and just skating around. And then started working at Sub. And that's kind of when I met everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I would see Rick at Love, but I wouldn't say anything to him. You know what I mean? But once I'm on the other side of the counter, you have to kind of hang out. And I definitely kind of met everybody at that time, you know, which is pretty rad. I probably wouldn't.
Because if they gave you the pass to work there,
What's
you kind of had. If they gave you the pass to work there, like you couldn't. They weren't hiring any like random moron. Like you had to kind of already be in with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how I pulled that. I was pretty much a random moron. I think I knew Skip and he was leaving, and maybe Ed Bush were both leaving, and it was like they needed somebody. So right place at the right time, I guess. But
and Shane owned it at the time.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess I don't know. I don't want to say it was like the beginning of the end, but he was definitely like getting super into cars, and you know, it was a bit of a fracturing at that time. You know what I mean? I mean, you probably know better than I do. Like when it turned into MC. And,
I was going to say, because by like 99, it was definitely MC.
Yeah. So it was on its way out in a way, which was a bummer. Like I remember we had a meeting to talk about doing Sub-Zero soft goods. And it's like at this time, Sub-Zero is on the same wavelength as like FTC and Supreme. You know, they're just like the preeminent shops of that city. But it's crazy to think like where those went.
Yeah, or where it could have gone if the attention had stayed there instead of moving to something else.
I think so much stuff in skating kind of has its moment, you know, and like that Sub-Zero video is still legendary, and I think it's like that's the place and time. I mean, Spikes was a shop before Sub-Zero. and that probably only had a 5-year window. And then Nocturnal.
Yeah, and that was kind of the transition time anyway between like Rick and those guys kind of fading out, and like Josh and Stevie and Carrie and all those people.
Very much so. Yeah, because it was like, I don't think Rick was skating. I think his back was hurt. Matt got sick. Serge moved to New York like after like Silver Star folded, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that happened really quick. Yeah, Josh and Stevie rode for Elite,
mm-hmm.
which had its kind of window in between when Nocturnal took off.
Yeah, and then I think Nocturnal was like 2001.
Yep. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, because I think Kerry won Tampa 2000, and then that's the money he invested in opening the shop with Tim.
Yeah, I mean,
it's an interesting timeline of like how it all broke down.
But even that, it's like Tim and Kerry aren't really connected. They had their time of like really being there every day, and then eventually, kind of like how Traffic is, like it's still there, but it's not Rick or any of the original like principal people. Like, thank you to Pat Steiner and Josh Stewart for keeping it rolling, but you know, it's like you can only be every day invested in something for so long.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. And then even, you know, it's just, I remember just not being from the Philadelphia area and with Sub-Zero though, but we were all so hyped on it.
Oh yeah. I mean, people from around the world were hyped on it. You know, it definitely had its time of hitting super hard.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed when you watched the video, you did not mention that the whole intro was Switch. Like you're talking about these dudes being daggers, and it's like the whole intro is Switch.
Oh, it's great. You know, I watched it when I was watching it, and I was like, I swear we used to sit there and just be like, oh, look at these guys, daggers. And I was like, they're not doing like just board slides and 50-50s, and they're not doing any of that.
I mean,
they're like doing real tricks. It's crazy.
Josh and Stevie, I feel like, yeah, and this is a thing that people don't really talk about when they kind of talk about that whole beef, if you want to call it that, is like, they're just like 5 years older. You know what I mean? Like, obviously a lot, it's like, these are like suburban dudes, but they're also 5 years older. And it's like, when you're 18, do you want to hang out with a 13-year-old? No.
Yeah. No.
You know, so it's like, that's a chunk of that rift right there, you know?
Yeah, I think it's just
and it's
the way time played out.
Yeah, because I'm not thinking of it. Back then, when did that come out? 94? So I'm 16 years old. Like, I can't even comprehend that people are skating at 25, you know, or whatever, you know. Doesn't even cross my mind. It's just, oh, these are people that skate, da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, and, you know, that makes a lot of sense. Those dudes were just, it's two different generations almost of skaters there.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely had a different outlook, but I don't know. I just remember that when you're a teenager, it's like a year or two is a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So yeah, when, like you said, like there's a 5-year gap, that's a huge change.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to associate with those same people.
Yeah. But anyway,
they're not going to Tattooed Moms with them afterwards and doing all that post session. You know, it's like those kids are going home to do high school shit.
Yeah. And that is kind of like, you know, when I started talking to Rick and, you know, met everybody. And then I kind of actually remember, do you guys remember when the Alien TF was going?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went a bunch of times.
Like 2002 or something.
Yeah.
Must have been 3 or 4. But anyway, it was like one of those nights that everybody was posseing up at Nocturnal and cars were going out. And Rick was actually going, which was kind of surprising. And it was me and Rick and Mike Manitas in the car. And he was talking about, oh, New Deal's done. I'm going to start this new thing. And I was like, oh, if you need help doing graphics, like, awesome. And it was kind of like, at least in my head, I don't know if it was said out loud, but it was like, Rick's the pro, Mike Manitas is the am, I'm the art guy. And yeah. So, I mean, it kind of started from there. I went with Rick to the ASR in LA, I guess it was, in 2004
In Long Beach?
or 5. That's how old Traffic is, dude. Like, it's 20 years old now.
Crazy.
That's crazy to think.
Yep. I know.
Wow.
Seriously.
So had you done any board graphics before that, or was Traffic the first board graphic?
Traffic was the first. I was thinking about the only other thing I did was I had the dubious honor of making the flyer for Mike V's poetry night that he did at the coffee shop across the street from Sub-Zero. And
the one that he tried to turn into
that gig? Like, how did that come up?
I mean, I worked at the shop. I worked at Sub, and I guess somehow, Mike's coming to town, and they're going to do this event, and we need a flyer. And I kind of know how to work Illustrator. I did get a signed poetry book that I still have somewhere.
Wait, Mike Vallely has a poetry book?
I think he has a lot. I mean, he's kind of
learned something new.
He's been on this like Henry Rollins shtick, but yeah, he writes poetry, sings for Black Flag. He does it all.
Henry Rollins mixed with Spinal Tap. I'll never forget. They came to X Park on a tour, on like a tour bus thing, and they wouldn't get off the bus until the guys from the park had like everything on their rider ready for them to go.
I mean,
like coming in on some rock star shit and like, oh no, we need this specific vegan cheese and we need this and we need that. And they were like,
which is funny because it's like you're Black Flag. Like you're notorious for touring the country with no money and sleeping in the van and, griming it up. But I don't know. But yeah, I did that. But Traffic was definitely the first thing in skating. And I mean,
so did you do those first? Did you do those first ones with like the street signs?
No.
Okay.
So that was a little. I don't remember the guy's name. I know he was friends with Jim Menser, and I think he was just not as communicative. And I literally lived a couple blocks away from Rick. And so we could like skate back and forth to each other's house in like a couple minutes. But yeah, that's kind of how that went for a few years where
that's awesome.
I don't know, every couple weeks or something, Rick would just like skate over to the house, bring a blunt and a 6-pack, and we would just like chop it up and look at whatever we had and, make stuff. Which
was it so with the first Traffic boards, they were Penswood.
No, so that's the thing. The very first one that Mitch is talking about went through Robbie Gangemi's vehicle thing.
Okay, was it Popmaster then?
I don't know, but I know that the plan was that they were trying to get he wanted Rick on vehicle and he wouldn't go for it. So then he was trying to get the boards through them. And I don't think they were happy with the quality of the boards. And
no, they were like an inch thick.
Yeah. They were like phone books.
Yeah, they were crazy. Mitch, you ever see one?
Dude, it's funny. Like, I don't know if it's just me being like so psyched on the idea that Rick was doing something new on his own that I skated a bunch of those and was like, these boards are awesome, whatever. And it was like, they probably were terrible, but I just, in my memory, I'm like, because I had no idea it was coming. So then all of a sudden, like I walk into Sub-Zero and there's these 3 different graphics of like, it's just the green, like standard Philly street sign with a white background.
Yeah.
And it just said like either Rick's name or Traffic or whatever. And like, I'm thinking it's the greatest thing ever. And they probably sucked, but I was
they were not good. And I talked to him about it because even when we were getting stuff through Penswood, it's like they weren't the best. And I'm kind of particular about boards and, most people are. But Rick was of the mind, he's like, I can skate anything. like,
Yeah.
which yeah, that's true. But at the same time, like when Anthony Correa was on and they went on tour, he literally had graphics screened somehow at Deluxe. And Deluxe like made him a couple boards to like go on tour with because he didn't like Chapman or Penswood boards.
Yeah, it was. Well, I was going to say too, because I know with graphics with them, it's insane because I've worked with them before, and like they charge you per screen, per color. It's insane. They hand screen the transfers and put them on, but it's like super difficult if you're trying to use a lot of colors. It either becomes a fortune, which I guess is where I was going to go. Was there like a restraint on it? Like, all right, Mike, we're using pens. You got to keep it to like 3 colors, 4 colors, or else we can't afford to make anything because it's $50 a board.
I don't remember that. I know that they gave Rick pretty good deals because, it was probably the most notable brand that was going through there.
Yeah, it was,
and it's just, they kind of just weren't good about timelines. And that's fucked. When you are an East Coast skate company, it's like, this is kind of a seasonal deal. Like, you're not going to sell as many boards in the winter. So you sending them to us, like, we don't have boards for half the summer, like, not good.
Yeah.
That's Penswood.
A huge delivery in like December.
I'm happy I wasn't alone in this one.
No, when I told you I had to number those boards at Tattooed Moms, they didn't have the graphic on them yet. Like, that's how much they had blown it. I had flown from Portland to Philly, gave them like a 2-month heads up. Hey, I'm coming out. I'll sign those boards. And they were supposed to be done. And they were literally just like cut out.
Yeah. I always had a story with them. It was always something. Oh, our roof blew off.
Well, yeah, he had to drive the whole shipment himself from Pittsburgh to Philly. I don't even remember if he sat there. No, he didn't. But then we had to ship him back to Pittsburgh so we could screen him.
Yeah.
And it was
insane.
Yeah, it was a fucking nightmare.
Uh-huh. Because I'm just going to say, I remember the first traffic boards I saw was at Sub-Zero. AJ Mizzou was working there. And do you know Zeb Snyder?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I used to hang out with Zeb. I used to always try and film him. I was always like I'm going to get a part out of this dude. So I'd hang out with Zeb. I knew him forever. And we went in, and I remember it was like, that's what I'm thinking. I remember it was like the street lights.
Yep, traffic.
It was like those boards, and I remember there was like 10 of them. And I never heard of traffic before until then. And I remember going in, and I was like, oh my God, this is like the coolest thing in the world. And yeah, it's funny. I was like, oh, this one has a red top. And the dude, AJ, takes it. He's like, no, that's mine. I'm putting that one on hold. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, like we said, like, it's fucking 20 years ago now. But
yeah,
that's like the dream, like I'm basically starting a skate brand with my favorite skater, and it's super like low key. We're hanging out at the house working on it. Dude, and then once, they, building a team, then Jack and Bobby got on, and it felt like, oh, this is like,
yeah,
good.
This is a thing,
like I think in my head, like, if a brand doesn't have 3 good pros, it doesn't hit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So like having it be Rick's baby was awesome, but then it felt legitimized once you had like that Via era where there's a whole team behind it,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was super fun.
Man, coolest thing. So you were around from the inception, like, or did Rick already have the name? Or I guess you said so. Was Mike Manitas in on this at one time?
What's that?
Was Mike Manitas in on it at one time? I know you're saying he wanted to start something up, or was he talking about Atlas?
Which is a bummer. Like, Mike's literally one of my favorite skateboarders and just like best dudes. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you know, I don't know what happened like post New Deal. I feel like he moved and did the skate camp thing not long after that.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that we talked about it.
Yeah, because
he was kind of one of those dudes that would be like, oh, you know, it'd be awesome. But there was a handful of those dudes that maybe Rick was psyched on, but then he was like, oh, I'm going to go to school or whatever. Like, you know, there's so many dudes you could flow boards to, and then, you know, not everybody's going to have the will to like make a go of it.
Right. Or the means to. Like, hey, I got this company I just started. I can't pay you. So,
well, see, I think that was probably the biggest thing for Rick was like, he didn't necessarily want to turn dudes pro because he didn't know if he could sell their boards. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, I don't think he wanted to like, hey, cool, you have your name on a board, but I can't pay you this month. Like,
right.
We're definitely so scrappy most of the time that, you know, he was probably like, I'm trying to feed my family. I don't want to have to worry about feeding 3 families.
Yeah. Especially it being, like you said, an East Coast brand. Winter's here. You know, you're only getting sales for, like, if you're lucky, 7 months, 8 months, you know?
Yeah, I can say that, like, traffic is big in Japan. Like, I think Rick is big in Japan. Like, I know that he had offers to do licensing deals where they would just produce everything over there. And, I mean, it probably could have been a good deal. It would have been really hard to monitor. But,
yeah, exactly.
I think that probably so much of their sales were coming from over there, you know?
Yeah, that's I don't know if you ever heard of the Northern Company, but my partner and I used to do that. And I remember, like, towards the end, I kind of split off of it. But they were so big because those dudes would go to Japan. And they were out every year, and Japan took to them. And I remember that was, like, the only thing keeping him afloat was Japan.
Yeah.
Like, they were placing these huge orders, but the wood shop we were using also sucked, so we could never get anything over there.
But then also, like, Rich Adler lived there for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel
and that stuff's huge.
Yeah, I wonder what Japan's perception of him was. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if he was in magazines and stuff much, but I'm sure he's probably one of the only like American pros to go to Japan and just live there.
Yeah, I think there was, what is it, Overground Broadcasting or something? I think he had a part in one of their videos, which is like
Night
a
Prowler.
pretty big deal out there.
It's sick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rich is definitely like one of my favorites. And that's another thing. Like, him and Jack were like best buddies, and they both have like totally different styles, but super sick. Like, 2 of my favorites. So there was this whole time when Jack was literally either going to get on Traffic, a reboot of Rasa Libre, or Element. And it's like, somehow we won out. But I think I remember writing him an email like, hey, I'm just trying to make these graphics, so if you could let me know if I can make some with your name on it.
And did that end up being the Black Sabbath one?
Yeah.
Was that his first board?
Yeah. That's a gimme. Like, that was what Eli Gesner would call a layup. It's just like so fucking obvious you have to do this.
Yeah, it was. I had that one. I love that board too, and that was a Penswood board, and I remember having it. And I think I rehooked that board up like 3 or 4 times. It was the coolest thing to have a Jack's backboard. So I was super hyped on that one.
Yeah, like you said, that Via era was incredible.
And I don't know. I mean, again, it was probably not seen by all of skateboarding, you know? I watched it with a buddy a couple of years ago who had never seen it, and he was kind of like, holy shit, like, this is really good. And, you know, if you've never seen Henry Panza, or you've never seen these dudes, and it's like, Dan Plunkett, Mark Wetzel, like, dude, Mark the Shark's, everything that dude does on a skateboard is so good. And I don't think most people are aware of it.
knowing how hard the stuff is. The spots are so crazy. Everything. It's
yeah. Well, that's
you
another
can't understand
thing.
it till you go there.
It's different when you can see a spot in real life, like all of Damien's stuff, where it's like, dang, that looked cool, but it also went by so fast. And then you go there and you're like, oh, this is fucking insane. Like, how did he go from there to here and do this
I'm
quick
not
little
skating
setup
that.
ollie in between? Like, yeah, it's always awesome to see things for real. Like, even just watching somebody skate in real time is so much more impressive than video, usually.
Yeah, totally. And that's when you can see. I still remember just skating with Philly and with Zeb in Philly. And like I said, I remember seeing Damien Smith just skating by, like Mach 10 doing flips down the street, you know. And I'm just like, this is like real. This isn't like this is what they do.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is so cool to see this.
Definitely Damien was very much in the like Rick mold of things, his approach and everything. And yeah, I mean, that's a bum. I remember doing a graphic for him and that never came out.
Was it similar? Because I remember seeing it to the ones that are like reversed, like there was an oil and a polio, and it was one of those. Yeah, so cool. I remember seeing that somewhere in a magazine, but it never came out. Right?
Focus. Like a couple of years later, I did an interview in Focus magazine, and they put it in there.
Yeah, but it never made it to no.
And I'm like, that's his paintings now are so good. And I'm like, man, Traffic should do a Damien series, you know?
Yeah.
I'm sure they've talked about it, but I'm not connected to those guys really at all anymore.
I mean, geez, that would make sense. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I grabbed the board he did for Nocturnal with the skyline. So cool. But those portraits are unbelievable.
And it's crazy to think, like, you know, when he was skating a lot and we were hanging out, I don't think he painted at all, you know?
I never knew that about him. And then all of a sudden, like, he comes out and you see this stuff and you're like, oh, wow, that's like this talent that I never knew that dude had at all.
Yeah.
Man.
Super sick.
Does he still skate?
I don't know.
I haven't seen him in a long time, but I feel like a lot of people still like low key skate, or like you'll see them like come out once in a while, but
which is cool. It's always nice. I don't know. I always just like knowing like that they still love skating like that, where they, you know, I still skate, even if it's once in a while or whenever they can. You know, it's because there's been people too, like I guess like Pluhowski, like that dude just quit skating. He doesn't skate. You know, it's kind of crazy.
I mean,
like
I don't know. It's weird to me on a level of like, you know, I've never been that good, and I've always just kind of like puttered around and just thought it was fun. And I think it is harder for people when they have like a career arc in skateboarding. And it's like, you don't want to go to the skate park and have kids watch you struggle, you know, like I get that. And dude, all the stuff that Pluhowski said in that interview was awesome. Like, you know, he's like, yeah, I did it. And I don't need to do it now. Like, it's like, yeah, my kickflips were good. I don't want them to not be good now.
Not be good.
Yeah, my mindset is so different from that, but I guess because I was never at that level where I'm just like, I can't imagine my life not skating.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, plus I just don't know what the hell else I would do with myself.
Start painting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, I don't know. That's just, I was always like, just even to push around, like it's still fun to be on a board. But again, if you're a pro, I can see that.
There's also this like unreasonable expectation in skateboarding that's like, oh, we want to see, where's the footage? And it's like, where's the footage, Jeremy Klein? You fucking 55-year-old dude. Like, what? It's so unreasonable to think. Like, I don't think any other sports are like that, where you're like, man, I wish Jordan would just come out and like just shoot around a little bit. Like, it's not a thing.
Because it's so weird because you will see people like Tony Hawk or whoever that like are still putting out parts at like mid 50s. And you're like,
yeah.
Well, I guess it's easier too. They can financially, like that's.
Oh yeah. I'm just saying, like
doing that all the time.
I'm sure
it's
that
interesting
if Rick
to see
didn't
the like
need to do a job, that he might skate some, or more. But you know, it's also like it's okay. It's okay if you can't do that stuff or don't even desire to do that stuff anymore. You know, it's skateboarding will be fine.
Yeah, I had a couple years where I was skating with like Chung and Rich Adler for a while, and like the two of them were getting out a bunch, and it was like they kind of had that different mentality of like they're just doing what's fun for them, and like it doesn't if they would never want to like phone film anything.
Oh yeah,
like they'd be like, oh, I don't want to post it, but like just fun like getting out with them. Well, so it's cool to like see that side of it too, where it's like they've found that balance of like, no, I don't need to like be breaking any ground, but I can still go out and skate and have fun.
And I just think it's cool. Even they were going out to skate is, I guess, what I'm getting. Like,
totally,
you know, like Jimmy will skate a parking lot by himself. He doesn't need to just to skate.
And Jimmy's that same thing of like, didn't skate for 20 years and then just still looks perfect on a skateboard. And he's actually him. And Roger Brown were the dudes that I saw when I first went to Love. And
that's
like,
awesome.
I feel like Jimmy Chung was probably the first dude that I saw that was just like phenomenally good and could just, you know, pop nollies over huge things and could skate the tall ledges when all we could skate was like the around the fountain stuff. Those dudes made such an impression. And then like, a couple of years ago, I did a series for Terror Planet X, the like the robot series.
Mm-hmm. And he was supposed to have one.
I want one of these to be a Jimmy Chung board. Like it makes sense. He grew up skating with Mike and yada yada. And I think I hit him up, and he was kind of like, "Yeah, I'd rather not be bothered." You know, like I don't.
Yeah,
think
that's what we ran into the same thing.
Now this dude wants me to film a part. Like he didn't want to have expectations, which is very reasonable. I was just of the mind, like I remember this person skateboarding and I thought it was awesome, you know? And it's rad that you can see new clips of him. Like you said, it's kind of a bonus. If you get to see
and even
that
if he wasn't filming it, it's still cool. He skates because he's like, oh, I want to go skate. You know, today I want to play tennis. Tomorrow I want to skate. Like, it's just cool. He still has it in him.
Well, like
that he wasn't skating for like 20 years.
Like Josh would say to Rick, like people just want to see you push. You know, people just want to have that feeling of like, oh, it's cool to see that he still skates. He doesn't have to break ground.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, this person means so much to us that we want to keep having that experience, even though like maybe that's unreasonable.
Mm-hmm. No, I could see it from a person too. And Ricky's like, but I don't want to just push. I used to be able to do stuff.
He's very, very critical, you know?
Yeah.
Which is, you know, it's admirable until you are trying to film him and he doesn't want to use anything.
So it was the first series of Traffic. Vehicle was the wood shop.
Yeah, at first, like it was only Rick. There was no team. So we would do like, I did like a couple series that were Philadelphia history. And then
those were awesome.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, like
is that the one with the mummers? Did I say that right?
Yeah. One is the mummers and the zoo. One is the Move Fire. One is the Masonic Temple, and one is the Philadelphia Experiment.
Yeah.
And then I would have like little paragraph on the top graphic that would be like the Philadelphia Experiment, whatever, or you know, Move Fire is such a notorious part of Philly history, and especially in the current political climate, when you're like, oh, did you know that like Philadelphia mayor like dropped a bomb on private citizens? Like that's pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
And it's even, like you said, it's even crazier. Like, people don't know that happened. Like, how does that happen and people don't know?
Yeah,
It's not like,
that wasn't even like the end of the story, because they totally, when they rebuilt all the houses that had to be rebuilt, they did it as shoddily as possible. And like all of those houses have already been demolished, I think, because they were just, placeholders. Probably people took as much money as they could and then built the cheapest thing possible.
Yeah, I think we just came up on like, it was like the 30-year anniversary or something, and there was a whole special about it on TV.
85
over the summer.
So
okay, so it's not crazy, but I'm glad they're like still talking about it now, where it's like, those people went to jail, those kids died, like crazy shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty gnarly to put on a skateboard graphic, I guess. But I mean, I think I was really trying to establish the vibe of what Traffic was, which to me was like, you're dealing with like Rick's graphic history, right? So it was like very zoo inspired, and kind of because of like who Rick is, like you can't make like a funny board graphic. You can't make like a Wet Willy type of a thing. Like it has to be appeal to like a more adult pair of eyes.
Yeah, he can't have like a spoof graphic of like.
Yeah. So I think that was, really trying to establish what that brand looked like. And, leaning into the kind of like Philly's a super old city, very blue collar, lots of history. And, just started to kind of spin stuff from there.
I was looking through like old Traffic graphics, and that temple one, which is the plain temple T real big in the middle of the board. Like I remember seeing that one everywhere.
Yeah,
because it always showed up so cool in photos and stuff.
Well, that's another layup for sure.
Yeah,
but it's like one of those where you think of it and you're like, oh, so that makes sense. Like there's so many people that skate there. It's literally like I don't even have to change the graphic at all. I'm like tracing.
You didn't get any cease and desist or anything before that board?
No, I mean, I don't think Temple would care. And also, like, again, we're so under the radar. The only time that Traffic got any static, I think, was for a tech deck. We got
Traffic did tech decks.
Yeah. Oh, dude, we were getting some sweet tech deck money for a minute.
That's money.
But they wanted to put a sticker sheet in there, and we didn't even make stickers. So I was just like, took a couple logos that we had and just made a sticker sheet, and it was like this big, and then somehow there was one logo that was like a rip of the Phillies logo or something. And because it's a tech deck, it's in like Walmart, and someone spotted it, and they basically, I think we just Traffic didn't get to make tech decks again for a couple of years.
Wow. That's crazy. But that was a good source of income though.
I mean, for Rick,
which is cool. Hey, if it's more money to keep everybody there skating, go for it.
Yeah.
That is,
I mean, I think if people knew like the amount of money that tech deck, like, and these kind of companies that we see as being kind of corny, like definitely inject a lot of money into skateboarding or skateboarders' pockets, which it's like, I wish that a guy's board brand paid more than his energy drink, but he probably doesn't.
No, it's one of those things. It's like you gotta, even these kids come up, you gotta have some kind of corporate sponsor to pay for it so that you can ride for your cool board sponsor, because these things are cool they're cool. They're not played out, and they still have like a more smaller audience But if you're going to ride for that, but you need to have money going somewhere so you can keep skating, because you can't skate as much when you're working a full-time job.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, one thing that was kind of funny, and this is like jumping way ahead, but when I was doing stuff with Dwindle and they were looking at stuff they wanted to do reissues of, but 90% of that stuff is all rip-off graphics. And they didn't want to do that now because, you know, the state of the world is different. They're owned by all these companies. It's like you can't rip off Disney like we could back then because just the eye level is so much. There's so many more eyes on you.
Yeah.
That makes it. So is that why they went with that weird Geno 101 board?
That's why yes.
Yeah, because that one wasn't a Geno board I would think of as like, oh, I remember that 101
right, because you would do like the Grave Diggers one or something. Or I pitched...
There's the HBO one I always think of with the city.
I pitched the Henry Sanchez Oh Henry candy bar.
Oh, yeah, that would go so fast.
But yeah, crazy like a lot of the stuff that they were coming up against was like, all the stuff that you remember is like, oh, this Jason Lee is a Guess Jeans ad or something like
the Grinch, like all that stuff.
Yeah, man, that's insane because that's funny. When I saw that board, I was like, well, this is cool. It's like a Geno reissue, but I was like, not what I would have picked. But now I know why they went that way.
Yeah, but on the upside, the Guy Mariano, Jane Mansfield board that I was talking about just got reissued. And they did.
Is it a slick? Did they reissue it as a slick?
They did both. There's like a slick on a 7.5, and then there's a heat transfer on an 8.5. So you get one for the wall and one to ride.
It's pretty cool. Do you remember when Big Brother had like the subscription thing and they were giving away, they wrote a free board and didn't put a date on it?
Yep.
And my friend mailed that in, and that was the board he got. So they were saying, but they were already older boards, so they were clearing what they were doing then.
Yeah, they started clearing out their way of getting rid of warehouse. Stock.
So so I remember it was like a shape board, and I remember we ripped the slick off of it because we're like, it's like, I don't want a slick. So he ripped it off, and I think Timid Bob's shirt still has the slick bottom, just like
for which graphic?
For that Jane Mansfield.
Wow, sick.
Mariano.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember when you would rip the slick off, it'd be like all fuzzy underneath.
Yep. Yeah. I remember I did that to my Gabriel versus the Crusher. And I remember I ripped it off and I was like, oh, it's fuzzy.
I mean, how fucked is it that during that early 90s era, that's arguably like the golden era high point of skate graphics, and it was such a trend to like scrape your graphic off or like scrape the graphic off your wheel, scrape the graphic off your board, like peel the slick off, like cut your fucking new pair of shoes, cut them. Like everything had to be edited.
Paint pens on them. Yeah.
Yeah. Customized.
Yeah. It was crazy. Because I remember you'd see a video and like, oh, that guy's a blank. That's so cool. Like, I remember we'd sit on our train ride into the city and we would take a quarter and scratch the graphics off our world boards.
Yeah.
And so we'd have an hour train ride and we're just sitting there scratching.
Yeah. They used to call it spooning because some people would use the edge of a spoon.
Yeah. And take it off, and you still get the laminated on there, but you got the graphic off, and your whole hand's covered in all these little paint chips.
Yeah, but it's just like, how ridiculous is that? And then you're thinking like, oh, I had this Day One Land Before Time board, but I just like peeled the whole graphic and chucked it.
Yeah, it's pretty much now I have a blank board. I remember when World used to double screen boards too. I guess they had old boards and they'd screen over them, and I had a Kareem board. And I was like, oh, I can see something through it, but I can't tell what it is. And I kept scratching it off, and it ended up, it was a Mike Crum Prime board, and I was so pissed.
There's
that was like the worst.
Somebody posted this picture on one of the groups that Mitch and I are in that they got one of those like bitch boards.
Yep.
And it was like a big logo graphic or whatever. but they scraped it off because they were like, oh, it looks like there's a slick underneath. So they scraped all the paint, and it was like the Ice Cube lynch mob graphic.
Oh.
Which is, I mean, I would never want to hang that thing in my house, but you definitely are uncovering like an insane relic that there might not be any other of in the world. It's pretty sick.
Yeah, man. Mitch, you weren't skating then, were you?
Oh. I didn't start till like 94, 95.
Yeah, it was, man. It was so cool. Just everything was like, that whole time period was just amazing.
I did peel the slick off a board though.
Yeah.
But it was a shitty Powell board that I was like this. And then I peeled it off and it was like, felt like it was like 4 plies underneath that like didn't last at all.
I mean, it's just funny to think about all the eras of skateboarding, like because of when I started, you know, the late 80s, mid 80s looked totally different than 1990. And then by 95, that's a totally different thing. And then, you know, anything past 2000, I don't even acknowledge because it's like, oh, that's kind of too recent. Like, I can't even be nostalgic about it, but obviously
where I'm like, this is my people, like this is my time.
Well, you know, like that's what's kind of funny, right? Like so many people are collecting like birdhouse boards now, which I don't think I've ever even seen a birdhouse board. Like it's just people that are 10 years younger than me start skating because they played that video game. And when you play the video game, you have a birdhouse board. So that became like the thing that was like super nostalgic for them. Like, you know, when Wet Willie and Flame Boy were hitting, I was riding Silver Star boards. You know, I was ordering all the stuff for Sub-Zero, and I knew I had to order all these corny Flame Boy boards. But, you know, had I started skating that year, I would be sitting here as an adult thinking Flame Boy was pretty tight. You know?
Oh, in the same way, I went through that like BAM, Viva La BAM era when I was working at G-Spot, and we would sell 100 BAM boards a week.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
I remember that. We used to, the shop by us, we had a wall. We used to call it the whack wall. And that's where it would be your BAM boards, your Flame Boy boards, like anything for the kids. Like they'd walk by like, yep, that's your wall right there. And then we kept all the cooler stuff. What we should have done is put the wall that was going to sell in the back. So they had to walk past the cool stuff and maybe grab one of those instead.
Dude, one of the stories I heard was, if you guys know the shop Skate Lair in Connecticut.
Minneapolis or something?
I'm actually not sure, but they were super into traffic. The owner loves Rick, and kids would come in there and want to buy a Flame Boy board, and he was like, "Nah, you don't want that, kid. You want this board over here." And he tried to, you know, slide him into something that he liked, and then if the kid was like, "No, I really want Flame Boy," they were like, "All right, well, put these boxing gloves on, and you and this other kid are gonna like box for 2 rounds, and if you win, you can get the Flame Boy board."
Wow, that's amazing. And that's how it should be.
Well, yeah, I mean,
not having the kids fight, but even the shop owner.
But it is supposed to be about the older dude being like, here's what I think is rad, you know?
Yeah, it should be. I always like telling a story about these boards because it's kind of like every brand should have a story. And you go into a shop like, all right, cool, you want this, but let me just show you some other stuff. And then, you know, 9 out of 10 times the kid will still walk away with Flame Boy. But, you know, that's how they learn. They don't know anything until somebody shows them something else.
And I think that's like the job of the skate shop is like, like, oh, you don't want that video, kid. You want this video. Like, I don't know. It's a bummer that doesn't necessarily happen as much, but also like, who buys a video? It's like, I think all the shit that we were so obsessed with, like obviously the boards but also like the clothes, like Bob shirt, like You know, those
Yeah.
terribly cut shirts that were from World Industries with the weird like contrast stitching and stuff. Like we thought that was the coolest because and we wanted that. We were going to buy 3 magazines every month. Like, I just think that type of media, it doesn't exist. Like, I don't think kids would ever consider like spending $30 on a video.
No, now no. That's changed. Like even clothes, all that stuff's different now because these kids, go to a thrift store, you know, and it's magazines.
I mean, nothing wrong with that at all. You know, I definitely did a lot of thrift store stuff too, but I remember like just going to a skate shop was like everything in this store is gold. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like all the t-shirts, all the stickers, just, oh, we got this new board and it's in a black bag. We can't even hang it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, dude, it's so fucking cool. Like, I want that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember with my first experience of something like that, it was my 3rd board. First board, I went with my dad. I got a Tony Hawk. 2nd board, some guy at my dad's job skated, and he gave me, it was a Tom Groholski Vision.
Wow.
And my dad came home with it, and I was like, we had the skeleton.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It was like
the
some
swirly eyes.
Skeleton. Yeah. And so it was that. And I remember I was kind of like, cool. You know, it's a board. This is really cool. But I didn't get to pick it out. It was just kind of, my dad was like, the guy said this is the best board. I was like, okay. The 3rd board I went to go pick out, and I wanted the Jeremy Klein vegetable board, World Industries. And I go to get it, and I'm like, I want that one. And the dude at the shop, he's like, no, you don't want that, kid. And he's like, you want this. And he shows me his Skull Skates uncut. It was like a rectangle.
You want a whole project,
a double kick,
kid.
But it was square. It was a double kick. It wasn't one of the uncuts, but it was square, double kicked. And I have to be like 11 or 12 at the time. And this guy hands his board is like huge. And he's like, this is a good board. You'll ollie higher with this. And I don't think he was being a jerk.
Yeah, he's like, we got to move this board, man.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that's just, he was like old school for the time. And I think that's what he would have rode. So he was kind of, you know, like showing me that. But meanwhile, it's like, this is like way too big for me. But I remember I got it because I was like, oh, this is like the older dude at the shop. Like, cool. And I remember getting it and I was just like, oh my God, this is like a chore. Like, this thing is crazy to ride. And then I remember saving up money and eventually going back later, like months later, and getting a Jeremy Klein vegetable board. But
yeah, wow, it's amazing it was still there.
Yeah, well, they probably had it. Yeah, because even how they turned over boards like that, definitely.
Like the way that graphics came out, so they started coming out really quick. Like when I started skating, everybody's board was their board. They had it for years, you know, like Bones Brigade and Santa Cruz. It was like very seldom did they change the graphic up. And then all of a sudden it started being like every month, every 2 months, new graphic. Maybe the dude's name isn't even on the board. It's just a picture, you know? And it's weird. People would always say like, oh man, I had 20 of that board. You know, I skated some, and I don't think I ever had a board twice. Like,
really?
Nah. Well, especially when I was a little kid, I had to ride it for like a year. But even later, like I remember I would have like I had a Christian Svitak phase, Black Label boards. And I rode his board for like a year or two, but every time it'd be a different graphic. Like I never had like 10 of Rick's board, which is what people always say to me.
Well, how often would you buy boards?
I mean, when I skated a lot, like every month, one a month,
every month,
maybe.
Okay.
But, you know.
Tim and I were bad. We used to like, when we were like 18, 19 around there though, it was like, okay, cool. I have a job like every week, new board.
Yeah. I mean, you know, looking back, I wish that I would have done that and just sat on some of them, you know. I think
that I wish I did.
I did, you know, when I was a kid and I made $50 a week or whatever, bagging groceries. I also like collected comics and records and, you know, other shit. I definitely got a lot of skate stuff, but yeah, I was not the type of person to just keep seeking out the same board over and over again.
Man.
I can definitely say I skated that Rick's hydrant board for probably a year straight.
Yeah.
Like every month I would get another one, but it was just, I just want that same board again.
Yeah, I mean, I would do like the whole time I was at Sub-Zero, I rode nothing but Silver Star boards. But
yeah,
I probably, oh shit, okay, I might be lying because Jim Menser would come in all the time and he would always ride the Phantoms board, the yellow one.
Mm-hmm.
And he went through so many of those that he would just kind of give me his cast-offs that had only been skated for a couple days. And I definitely had 2 or 3 of those. But it wasn't like I bought it, you know?
Right, you weren't seeking that one out.
Well, I guess going back into talking about the iconic graphics and then everybody just shooting out graphics all the time, it's pretty cool that you were involved with making an iconic graphic for Ricky Oyola.
Yeah,
right?
dude, I definitely think about that because, like, they still make that. I mean, they still use the light as a icon and the traffic light, and then they still, I think, make the like Rocky poster looking one,
which is the coolest. It's one of the coolest boards that they've done. It's
oh man, I should have put that one in the background because
Yeah,
you
oh,
gave
you
me
have
that
one?
one.
I have one over here,
one that
yeah.
never got made.
but I mean, that's
I remember there was a gold one, a silver one.
I can't think of other than like the Tom Penny Cheech and Chong board. Like, there's not many boards that have been run for that long.
Yeah,
No,
Which it is
No,
cool.
man.
Like, I think, you know, when I think of like iconic Rick boards, I think of all the Zoo stuff and the Silver Star stuff. I think that probably people that are a little bit younger that may have only ever seen traffic boards, like the fact that that's been out for so long, I think people would think of that graphic at this point.
yeah.
was that one?
Everybody's seen it.
Was that Rick's idea, or did you guys kind of? Were you like, "Hey, I
No,
got this
that was my idea. I just, I love the movie Rocky. Like, that's definitely one of my favorite movies. And I think Rick definitely has this ham and egger fighting guy. Like, I don't know. I mean, like, he told me that the Zoo guys all called him Balboa.
That's
Like,
insane.
years before I did that graphic. And, you know, it felt, it just one of those things like, this makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
Because
Was it hard to pitch to him, or he was like done?
What's that?
Was that a hard pitch to him? Like,
No.
or he was like, "No, this is great. Let's do it."
I mean, I think he kind of just went along with it. I don't remember him being like, oh, yeah, this is fucking awesome. I remember that Julius Reeves shot the photo. And I want to say they might have had to go back a second time because, I don't know, it wasn't right or something. But that board is funny to me because in my head, one of the rules of skate graphics is don't have a picture of the guy and don't have like a picture of a skateboard, like a skateboard on a skateboard, especially like a skate photo as your graphic. That's terrible. But I mean, there is this thing. It's basically the dude standing there holding a skateboard, but it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
No, it works. It's amazing. It is really cool that it can break the rules. And
Well,
you don't
maybe
even
somebody
think, like,
thinks it's dumb.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm giving myself a pass on it.
Yeah, no, it's sick. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that
This
view
is
of the city.
First
too.
one. This is what the top graphic. This is before the building's logo was designed, I think.
Is that one full dip?
Yeah, yeah. So this is this is like the first run, and this is when they still did the like hand painted.
That's through pens.
Yep. So just like how they said, they used to do all the zoo boards this way. Same deal. Mm-hmm. They would just hand spray them.
All right. Really? So while we're talking traffic, how was it working with Bob?
Not good. Not good. I mean, it's super funny now, and like we chat now, and it's actually really fun. But he's a very particular person, and where I think Rick is super particular, but he always had like a level of respect for me and my work because he knew that I was like trying to help him, where I don't think Bob had that. And also we didn't know each other. So it was like, we would have an email thread, and every day Bob would write this long thing about like, this graphic sucks because this photo can't be used, such and such is invalid. And like one time we had a graphics meeting at my house, and it was me and Rick and Bob and Jack. And eventually Rick and Bobby got in a fight about, he was like, wheat pasting is the rollerblading of street art. Because like, remember like in the traffic video, and you might not have even seen it, but at a couple of the spots, Rick wheat pasted a giant traffic light. Mm-hmm. And they ran, they would be up for a long time after the fact too. But, we kind of thought that was like a cool little thing to like hide in the background of the video. But yeah, Bob is super militant about his stance on graffiti and skateboarding and everything else. And those dudes got into it, and me and Jack like left the room and just went outside and hung out for like 20 minutes and just let them air it out. But, at the end of it, I remember kind of saying like in the email thread, like, I'm not doing this job anymore, and I want it to be known that it's because you are a pain in the ass and you're making this job not fun to me. And I didn't talk to him for like 5 years at least,
It's crazy.
But the thing about it is like all that stuff is, it's like the Big Lebowski. Like, you're not wrong. You're just an asshole. Like your perception is totally on point, and it's a valid criticism. The way you're saying it is very off-putting, but Bob's awesome. Like, one of my favorite skaters. I like that he has a real personality, and so, I probably don't agree with a lot of the stuff that he says, but a lot of it I do, and, we talked about working on some like t-shirt stuff kind of recently. And I was like, I actually think it's fun that like we can just like chat about skate nerd stuff. Like, I don't want to get back into that vibe of like being mad at each other because you didn't do something to my liking.
So was he the type, like, when he would tell you, like, this graphic sucks, would he give you, like, ideas, or was it just...
He did have ideas. I mean, like, the Metropolis one, that's, like, all the buildings.
Mm-hmm. Those were the first run on Chapman, I believe.
Really? Okay.
I think so. If they're the ones up there, they're buildings, and then, like, in the windows, it would spell out the name. It was, like, skyscraper buildings.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. We might have done a couple things with buildings, but yeah, the one with Bob was kind of inspired by this Metropolis movie poster, and he sent me a picture of the poster. Like, oh, I like this. Another one, like his first graphic, that was just kind of like text. The Last Drop coffee shop in Philly. He went there and he just liked the cup that the coffee was in. And he brought me the cup and he's like, I want this. So, you know, no, he's good.
That one had like a color fade through the letters.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, but he's creative and he has a point of view and, you know, he understands aesthetics and what he thinks a cool board graphic should be. I don't think that he can like do it all on his own, you know, like when he was doing that run of victim boards, it was like,
I wanted to ask you that, like the guy who says like, oh, this sucks. And then his graphic when he makes his company is guys falling in a warehouse.
Which that's kind of why it's cool as a designer to have an art director that can be like, that's a cool idea, but what if you do this and this? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that's the way you say it. You don't say like, that's fucking garbage. Like I could do better than that. And you know, your opinion is invalid because I was on the cover of Thrasher when you were sitting in homeroom, which is a quote.
Brutal.
Oh, wow. Man.
It's like, yeah, you're not wrong. That's very true. But that's fucking lame to say to somebody.
Yeah.
Man. Well, Mitch, I don't know if you remember too, when Victim came out. And so I remember this, like hearing about how difficult this dude is to work with. And I always had Traffic on a very high pedestal. And when he was on, I was like, oh, this is amazing. You know, moving in traffic. Top 10 video, possibly. Like
that's another thing to think about is like Rick Oyola and Bobby Puleo, like Josh Stewart said it, are like probably two of the most opinionated, stubborn dudes that probably hate 95 to 98% of skateboarding. That being said, that means like your bullshit barometer is pretty high. So the stuff that you like is probably very good. You know, it's awesome to be critical and have a filter. I don't trust people that just think everything is good. Like,
100%.
You know, dude, we see it like in those collector groups. And sometimes I'm not going to like dog somebody for their like choices, but it's like, yeesh, I would never do that. I would never spend money on that, or not my cup of tea.
Yeah, or even like aesthetic choices where we look at stuff and we're like, why the hell did you hang that board up with the cardboard insert still attached to it?
Right.
Yeah, it's like people are weirdos.
Yeah, but you know, maybe I know for me, my whole thing is like you're kind of trying to recreate that energy of like when I said you would go into a skate shop and it felt like everything in there was magical. Like it felt so valuable that I'm like kind of trying to recreate that thing of like you walk into the space and it's got all this energy. Maybe for some people, I want it to look like a skate shop. So they're fucking in shrink wrap with the little insert, you know? Or maybe they're just like, I want to flip this in 6 months. So I don't want to take the shrink wrap off.
Just walking into a room that you're like, oh, this is what I have displayed, and seeing like a size sticker or something, like just so off-putting to me.
Yeah. Agreed.
But it's also, funny, like, speaking of like the skate shop idea.
Yeah, I know that that's kind of what I'm doing, especially because I've been on the West Coast for over a decade, and every board here is like New York and Philly, to where people have seen these and just been like, oh, you're from Philly, huh? Because why else would you have those collection of boards, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I'm definitely kind of trying to harken back to working at Sub-Zero in 97 and having very little cares in the world. And
that's why I love when I
kickflip.
Yeah. I'll see people post photos of like them at shops when they were kids, and trying to like zoom in to look at like the board graphics in the background. Like Adam from Failure posted a picture of the shop the other day, like 3 or 4 pictures from like back then. And I'm like, oh, look at that old Alien board that's there. And like this, like just trying to like, oh, I remember that one. Like I've never seen one of those since.
I mean, it's such a time and place. I think that's why it really like strikes a chord for us as like, you know, you're hitting that sweet spot of like teen world where everything seems very open-ended and, you know, like, especially like I wanted to put the Alien graphics, like when I was thinking about my top 10 graphics, I was thinking all of the sculptures that Mike Hill made when they were slick and it would be a photo.
Yep.
Oh
I have one
my
on
gosh, those were so magical. And they like Alien seemed like far and away the coolest brand at that time, you know?
Yeah, I remember those were amazing. Those were so cool. And again, that's a cool use of a slick back then too, because you were able to get a different. You know, that's when they had different graphics they were able to do because it wasn't screen printing.
Yeah,
so it was really cool.
I
They
mean,
were able to.
like my buddy Abe, he skated for Basic, and dude, their graphics, they wouldn't even do anything. They would just like scan a magazine ad, and then that was the graphic. Like they wouldn't change text or anything. So it's just like, oh, it's a photo of Drew Barrymore. Like that's, I don't know. I remember thinking that's not very good. Like, you know, this is like when World Industries is killing it. But he was getting a box of free skateboards sent to his house. That's insane.
So you talked about when you ended working with Traffic. So then what have you been doing since?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, that happened. I kind of parted ways with those guys. And eventually we kind of got it back together, and I've done stuff for them here and there, but not on like a steady basis. But after Traffic, I was like, man, I really got to get a real job, because I was kind of like making that my job and barely surviving for a while. But then I started working at Mitchell and Ness, and I was designing like apparel for them. And then I wound up going and moving out of Philly, worked at Abercrombie and Fitch for a year, or Hollister, technically. Way cooler. And then moved to Portland. And then I've been doing like, you know, worked at Nike, worked at Audi, done a bunch of freelance stuff. But yeah, right now I'm working on footwear graphics at Nike.
You did some DGK boards, right?
Oh yeah. So kind of like coming out of quarantine times, I did a bunch of DGK graphics, and then I worked for Dwindle for a while and did a couple of Enjoy series, which I'm wondering if they will come out. Like if we will ever see them. Probably not.
Yeah, because I think Enjoy is like completely done.
Yeah, but I'm assuming like I did those graphics over a year ago. They're probably produced and sitting on a boat or something, you know, like
crazy.
I'm guessing that the boards got made. I don't know if they'll ever like surface. Maybe it'll be one of those deals where somebody screens something else over them. But
nice.
You know,
it'll be somebody else's Mike Crum board.
I would have loved to see my stuff come out on Enjoy. Like Traffic is awesome, absolutely. And it's like definitely super close to my heart because I like helped start it and work on it and make it into a thing. But the reality is like everybody in skateboarding sees DGK and Enjoy. It's like top tier, not a niche brand. They're like as small brand as you could be. So even that, like there's some DGK boards. I did a whole series that I thought was really good. And I thought it would have been out by now. And but I know that production stuff, and I think everything is taking longer, but who knows? You know, maybe that it won't ever surface.
But some of that stuff has come out, right? Like a Stevie board you did came out.
Yeah. Oh, I can actually show you that one. I have this. I had to buy this because I couldn't get them to send me samples. But this was like very prescriptive. They had a cartoon that was kind of like this. And they were like, we want it to look like Stevie. And, you know, it was not my idea. Like,
yeah.
But still, like, that same feeling of like, oh, I get to do a Stevie board. That's rad. Like, this is one of my favorite dudes. I've known him since we were both little dudes. And his trajectory is singular. You know what I mean? Like,
and then you did a board for Kev too, right?
Have I done a Kevin Taylor board?
I thought you did. Maybe not.
No,
okay. For some reason I thought you did.
I've done a carry board, a couple carry boards, a couple of Maldonado boards. Obviously, a bunch of Rick, Bobby, Jack, Rich Adler, Kalis, Stevie. So I definitely, like, I'm the only person that has done a Rick and a Stevie graphic.
Yeah.
Half hour for
But
sure.
maybe we should get into the other thing we wanted to do, which was each of us throwing out some of our favorite graphics.
But yeah, I know I sent you the list. I tried to do a top 5, and I wound up with like 20 graphics, like right off top. So I tried to edit it down, and you know, like thinking about the different generations of stuff too, because like, yeah, that whole world time was very fun, but when I look back, I think like, to me, the funnest time was kind of ban this to useless wooden toys. Like, kind of pre-world takeover. Like, that was the funnest. Like, Ray Barbie, it just felt a little more innocent. Like, the world era became about, like, just being a bratty kid, or I don't know. And like all the graphics are so racy and over the top. Yeah, the original stuff, like the Pal Peralta, all the Bones Brigade stuff, that was very much like what enticed me into skateboarding.
Yeah, I'd say.
I mean, I miss that whole era. So that's my stuff is going to look very different than both of yours. But I just kind of picked 5 that I feel like are my favorite memory associated graphics where I'm like, oh, that graphic was cool. It's always stuck out to me. So what's one of yours?
Let's see. Yeah. Well, the first one I have is, speaking of World Industries, it's the Stickorama board.
Oh, yeah.
That was.
I wanted that so bad as a kid. I looked at the ad with Jeremy Klein and Ron Chapman, like sitting there putting stickers on the board.
Yeah. I thought it was the coolest concept at the time. Granted, it's just like a wood stained board with a black and white graphic of a, but
do you remember color forms?
I do.
Yeah,
color forms were like a big toy when I was a kid, and I think that's kind of where that idea came from.
Yeah, it was,
but yeah,
to me,
I mean,
it was like, oh my god,
that was like very innovative. So that reminds me, one of mine is the Henry Sanchez Terminator.
Yeah,
most incredible idea, concept, and execution. Like we were talking about painting on a slick, but to do both and have it reveal a graphic underneath, so good.
Yeah, so ahead of its time. So I'll follow that because one of mine is the Gino, the 101, like the Wu-Tang one with the Jizza logo on it.
Yeah.
Like the cool kid that I like started skating with had that board.
And like, it said 101, like one is
like W-U-N.
Yeah. So, Mitch, you know what was crazy about that board at the time was that was a 775.
because the era that I collect is kind of like late 90s, early 2000s, so many of them are like 7.5 or even smaller. Like, take this one. Both of these boards are insanely small, but this one actually says how wide it is. And the fact that it's the Twin Towers, so sick.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the boards that I collect, I could never ride them because they're way too small. But
now, is that a thing too as a collector? Would you guys, if like even if it was something new, would you try and not get a size you'd ride so you'd never be tempted to ride it?
No, I mean, actually, one of the things I'm thinking about is like the first board on my list is Jeff Grosso Toy Box, which I would have never even wanted that board when I was a kid. I didn't like Jeff Grosso. I thought he was like a washed vert skater that was obviously on drugs when I saw him in Speed Freaks, which I don't know if you guys have seen that video. It's actually very rad, but there's like 80 dudes in it. But I'm a little kid, and I was like, this dude seems like he's on drugs. And then like years later, you learn like, oh, I've been up freebasing coke for 3 days, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, but every one of his graphics is the best. Like, I think he really did think about how he wanted to represent himself graphically. And even though he was out of his gourd, like, he nailed it from a graphic standpoint. Because like that and the Alice in Wonderland are like two of my favorite boards ever.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah.
Steve, you got another one?
Of course. So I'm going to skip around on my list, but the Ray Barbie Ragdoll. Ray Barbie was my first favorite skater. Like, kind of, I'd say, like, when I started understanding, like, you know, like, oh, skating and Ray Barbie. And I was like, this guy just looks so cool on a skateboard. And then that board, and I never had one. But that was always, like...
Yeah. No, I wanted that board. I never got it because the nose is pointy. Like, I just didn't like pointy nose boards. But obviously, like, Ray's still one of my all-time favorites. And yeah, I mean, that was a turning point for Powell also, because it was like not a fucking skeleton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was doing the Rad Dad stuff, we ripped that one off. My friend Bry came up with the idea of having like instead of the cards coming down,
dude, that was sick.
Wallet.
I'm looking at it right now. I have it hanging like right above my desk.
That's sick. And that was cool too, because with those boards, like Powell always kind of in the beginning too, they had a good way. They would just, you know, like you knew the graphic and they would do things now. And then the next board was a different ragdoll in a different position. And like you just knew, oh, Ray Barbie's board on Powell's coming out. It's going to have this.
Well, that's the other thing that I think is missing. I don't know if it's important or not. It's just the way that I saw skating was you had this like graphic heritage through like your whole career. And it was like tying you like, I don't think anybody knew what Rob Roscop looked like or did on a skateboard, but you know his graphic, right? So it's almost like, I mean, dude, Rob Roscop owes his entire career to Jim Phillips, in my estimation, you know? And just like another board on my list is the Lucero bars, which Lucero did, but he talks about it. He's like, that board made me popular. Like, I'm not a top tier skater, but my graphic is top tier, and I sold a bazillion of them, and I was getting fat checks because not because I'm winning contests, but because this graphic is iconic. And I think when you hammer the same image over and over and over again for years, it holds. You know what I mean? Like, we think of like the Tony Hawk chicken skull, but I don't think that you could say like Ishad has a iconic quintessential board graphic, right? Which is a shame. Even his parts, like we watched Video Days 500 times. You know, I watched every minute element of Gonza's part. Ishad will have 5 parts this year, and you'll watch them one time. And it's like, this dude's the best ever, but it's just everything goes by
and it's
so
like,
quick.
Oh, there'll be a new one out next week. I saw this. Cool. Where it was like a video was a year, 2 years. You had a video, and that was it.
And yeah, like we said, like that Ray Barbie part, how many times did you watch it? I mean,
yeah,
you really studied it to learn kind of every trick he's doing. Even like if you heard the song, you could be like, oh, this is the part where he's ollieing, he backside kickflips up these stairs or something. Like it just resonated so much harder because maybe there just wasn't as much media. I don't know. Just
even obtaining it was different. There wasn't the internet where you can just go online and go on YouTube and click, 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 click. You know, it's
you had
a video. You had it, or somebody you knew had it, and you'd maybe borrow it. It was like a big deal. Like, all right, we're going to watch this. And
you'd get the dub tape that was like
yep,
3rd generation, but it had like 6 videos on it, like every video from this year.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see my list here. But yeah, Lucero is another one I always loved that I never owned it. Gon's Man and Woman and the Andy Hal Schmidt sticks, both 2 of my favorites. Never had them. Same with the Stickorama. I remember looking at them in a magazine or a catalog like over and over and over again, but never had it.
Yeah.
So I was thinking there's that Toy Machine series that Adam Wallacavage did.
Yeah.
With all the little animals.
Yeah. So good.
That series is incredible.
I
was trying to pick if it was going to be that one or the Margaret Kilgallen series.
Oh, yeah.
They're both so good and like have like a certain time where I was like working at this surf shop and like those boards came in and like we couldn't keep them in stock because everybody was like, oh, these are so interesting and cool.
I recently saw one of the Alyssa Margaret Kilgallen online and it was autographed and she signed it like right through the graphic. And I was like, ugh. Have some respect.
Terrible.
Oh, that's like a #1 pet peeve.
Yeah, especially when there's open space somewhere that you could clearly sign it.
I mean, you can tastefully sign a board. Just don't sign it right through the middle of the graphic.
So I have also the Lance Mountain Doughboy, which Lance Mountain
and they're still running it.
I remember that too. It was like, oh man, I remember being in like, I want to say I was in like 8th grade, 9th grade when that came out. And I just remember like, this is the coolest graphic, the coolest board. I had a long sleeve with it. It was Christmas, you know, I got the board and got a long sleeve. I used to love that too when Powell had all the long sleeves with the logos on the side. Like, like I had a Kevin Harris one, like Kevin Harris, a freestyler, but it had the the Mountie skull with the like a beaver or something, and then it had the artwork on the sleeves. It was so cool when they did that.
I mean, that's like another thing. Like, do you remember the Powell sweatpants with the rats going up?
Yes, the rat bone sweatpants.
Dude, I wanted those more than anything in the world. They're so dumb. Like the fabric, I remember seeing them once in real life, and it was like the cheapest thing imaginable. And I remember being like destroyed that they weren't in my size. You know, like
it's
just because whatever it was that was skateboarding, I was missed of. I think it was, Tommy Guerrero wore them. I think anything, if I saw Tommy Guerrero do it, I'm like, that looks cool.
Definitely. I remember having the Vision sweatpants with the Vision down the one leg. And,
I had some Vision streetwear for sure. I had a couple pairs of the shoes. I had the turquoise and black shoes. I thought I was very cool.
That I remember wearing them. I had randomly, so I had when Ray Barbie had the black with the white and the red laces. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I remember it being like crazy. They would make him cut the patches off the shoe. But it was weird. Like, oh, you skate for Powell and you wear Vision shoes.
Yeah.
What a wild concept.
No frame
Which
of
is pretty
reference for
crazy that
one.
Powell at their peak like that never got into shoes themselves.
Yeah.
Just thinking about that now, I never thought of that before, but it's like, I'm surprised they didn't get into shoes.
I think Vision Streetwear was like hitting pretty hard. I think they were like in department stores and stuff like that. So they were probably making a lot of money from that stuff, like more than boards at that time. You know, I would say that even though we looked at Vision Streetwear as being pretty terrible, it's the first time I ever saw the words streetwear together.
Yeah.
And like everybody says like Stussy or whatever, but to me, like Vision Streetwear kind of invented streetwear.
Yeah. I remember when there was at Macy's, I remember I was like, oh my gosh, I was with my grandmother and all the clothes had a sticker. And I remember it was just like, boop, boop, you know?
Oh, yeah, yeah, the stickers.
Taking all the stickers off of them at Macy's.
I remember going to the skate shop to do like back to school shopping. And my dad bought me like the Chris Miller dog t-shirt, like a couple other things. But like I remember totally wanting, it was like a trench coat that was like newspaper print or something, like insane all over pattern. Like I think my dad like saved me by not buying me that thing. It's like, but it said Vision, like giant. Of course I want it. I want a beret. I want fingerless leather gloves. Like I want every stupid thing.
Yeah, it was, I remember that. What was it with Gons in the City?
With what?
There was a video. It was a Vision Streetwear video, and it was Mark Gonzalez skating in New York City.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I can't remember the name of it.
Is it Mondo Vision?
Mondo Vision, I think that's it. Something like that.
It's either Mondo Vision or like the Vision Pro Skate Escape.
Yeah, it was something, but it's so funny because, they're wearing, like, Mitch, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but, like, it's like berets and fingerless gloves. And
but he grinds a handrail.
I've seen, like, photos, but...
I mean, he grinds a handrail in New York at night in, like, 1987. That's fucked.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. But the gear is crazy. You watch it, and it's just like, man.
So as much as you guys were, like, complete marks for this stuff, I was definitely, like, such a on board for all the alien stuff. Like, later on, it was like, oh, I have an alien belt, and I got alien cargo pants, and I got an alien hoodie. Like, every bit of it, like, 'cause that was just the era that it was hitting. So I think that's two graphics that I went with. It's like the OG alien owl.
Cool.
Like, that one, for some reason, was always one that, like, really stuck out to me. And it's cool. They're still running it now. Like, they just brought it back on somebody's Joey Guevara's board or something. That one and Dill's abduction graphic. So it was like just the regular abduction graphic, but the guy on the bed had like curly hair around. I thought those were so cool.
That was going back to the sizing. So I remember I was super hyped when Dill got on Workshop. But that was another one. I think that board was 775 or 8. And I was like, man, who's riding a board this big? Because that was a, big board. At least for like a tech dude.
Oh yeah, because I was skating like 7.4 Kalis boards.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like I actually didn't ride a lot of world boards, even like when they were my favorite, because I knew that they were shit quality. I would buy the t-shirts, I would buy the videos, I'd buy Big Brother, but I didn't ride a lot of the boards because like I just watch people break them constantly. Oh, dude, actually,
that's all I wrote.
Check this out.
And that screwed me up to this day on boards is those things.
This board, Gons Blind Slick, and the only reason that I have it is because somebody snapped it.
So it was like brand new.
Oh, dude, look at the tail. Wow. That's like one ollie, and it just totally just... And if you ever watch the 9 Club, they have same board, same graphic, broken the exact same way. That was Jason Lee's, and he, did a kickflip, and it was gone. But I bought this on eBay for like $70 or something.
Wow!
Yeah. And that was like
that's
12 years ago now. But, you know,
yeah.
if this was in perfect shape, it'd probably be like 5Gs or something. Yeah. Terrible quality. But still, we thought it was the coolest anyway. But, speaking of, I wanted to say my 3 world boards was the Javante Runaway, the Guy Mariano Accidental Gun Death, and the Guy Mariano Jane Mansfield. Which, both the Guy boards are like paintings that were on slits. Yeah. They were amazing.
Yeah, I'm bummed I missed that whole era. Like, by the time I started skating, like, Girl and Chocolate was already a thing.
Yeah.
So, and it was like almost to the point where Mouse was coming out. So it wasn't even like, oh, I'm caught like the Goldfish or Paco era. Like, they were long off. Like, that whole era was kind of gone.
And World is Flame Boy. So it's like,
it wasn't quite there yet, but it was like,
but it wasn't
headed
good
in that direction. No.
Like, I think it's almost like if you were to like tell a kid, like, hey, Ice Cube used to be the best rapper in the world, and he was like terrifying, you know, like,
yeah, I mean, like, now he's daddy daycare guy.
Yeah, like, you fast forward 20 years, and it's like you couldn't tell a kid now that World Industries was the best. It just wouldn't make any sense. But I think that's one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about. I was been thinking about it because of Enjoy, right? Like, it's hard for a brand to live past the age of their customer. Like, I feel like average skater that you're selling to is like 15, 18. And, you know, we love Girl, but it's weird when Girl is 30 years old. And it gets to be like, how do you stay relevant? How does an 18-year-old look at you? You know, I think that that's a challenge for all brands, but we only think about skateboarding, you know, like, I think that everybody has their window, and then sometimes you're looking at brands and it's like obvious that they're way past their expiration date.
Yeah. Especially when you're somebody like Enjoy that kind of gets away with like the more immature side of like fun skateboarding. It's like, yeah, as a grown man, I'm not wearing a panda humping another panda t-shirt. Like, I can't take your brand seriously.
Yeah, but it was actually pretty dope to do the graphics because they're
don't get me wrong, I think it's cool.
You could bust them, and it had to just be a clever idea. But
exactly,
visual, you could execute in a couple hours. Like, you're not going to kill yourself for a week trying to like do this really detailed graphic. But,
you know, just take a panda and poop and, you know,
yeah, I did a logo board that was Panda Island, and it looked kind of like, you know, like a kid's menu map type of thing, but it was just like the panda logo was like a group of islands in a blue field, and there'd be like little, I don't know what was in there. You'll never see it.
Yeah, but it's hard. And even think like skaters change, skaters get older. Like, you have Girl, right? So the Girl we remember is definitely sure as shit not the Girl that's around today. It's you know,
yeah,
totally
but even
different. Chocolate.
Looking back, I remember when they were, you know, the best, and it was like you got 20 dudes, 25 dudes or something. And I would always think, like, how is it possible that you're floating like all the biggest salaries in skateboarding? Like, it doesn't, it seems wild even back then when they were really successful. But now you look at it and it's like, man, I'm not excited by anybody on this team, you know? Like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm totally out of touch. It doesn't matter what I think, but I don't think the impression is like, this is the best dudes, you know?
Right. Right.
I don't even know what kids would think that is now. FA?
maybe a couple years ago. Now it's like, who knows? Flavor of the week.
I don't even know. Frog's popular now, which goes over my head. And those dudes are good, but that's just one I don't get, and I guess it's not for me to get.
Yeah, no, graphically I've kind of looked at it and been like, man, I kind of want to like this. I feel like I should like it, but I just don't like it. But I don't know. In a way that,
I mean, there's a
like,
place for it.
The trend now is like anti-graphics. Like, honestly, like one of the best graphics is like that quasi board that's just a fucking square. Like, it's nothing, but it looks cool as a skateboard. You know, like frog stuff. It's like, instead of, it's very enjoy derivative to me, right? It's like, what if I just cracked open a kid's storybook and just lifted the graphic aesthetic from that? You know, like, it's not even trying to talk to like hip teenagers, it is, but it's doing it via like preschool, which
right, like, yeah, like, we're so cool that we don't have to try.
I guess
that's what it seems like. Like,
you know, when I was a kid, I wanted to have like a big sweaty skeleton on a board. I didn't want to have a fucking happy caterpillar like that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's whatever's going on everywhere at the moment.
Yeah, but I guess that's the thing. It's like, in the same way that I'm pretty content that I'm sure there's like really great hip hop coming out right now, and I'm just not aware of it. You know, like, I know Kendrick. I know like there's a couple people that break through for me, but like, I'm not the target demo. I don't need to think this shit is cool, you know? And it's almost like nice to be old enough to look back and see, oh, this is how this works. Like, you have to do something different. You have to, you know, it would be insane if a 18-year-old liked the stuff that I liked when I was 18.
Yeah. But it's funny because 18-year-olds now dress how I dressed when I was 18.
And thanks to Fat Bill's music selection in Supreme videos, I feel like kids are like, woo, Cypress Hill. They actually do. They look. I actually take it back. They look and they dress and they act and they skate and they listen to all the same shit that we did.
Full circle. Yeah.
Wait for a couple years when that tight pants zero phase comes back to all these kids.
Do you think that'll happen?
And it will.
Oh, nobody ever thought giant baggy jeans would come back.
Yeah, I never thought like the goofy boy look would be back, and that came back. So there's that skinny jeans, big puffy shoe, the worst look ever. That's going to come back. It will. Whether 10 years
that's another funny thing. Thinking about like 8.5-inch boards was like the shoes were dumb, puffy, could not flex the shoe at all. Like a very bad combination, but we did not notice at all.
Oh, it's like them bringing that Muska shoe back. Like, that thing was iconic in your head, but once you get it on your foot, it wasn't necessarily all that functional.
That came out when I was a sub, and I remember thinking, this is hideous, and it's $100. Like, nobody's going to buy this. And nobody did. Like, people can act like, oh, yeah, I had 10 pairs. No, you didn't. Like,
but people now that didn't have them back then
because
have money now to buy them.
Yeah, right. But
so all these goofy reissues will sell.
For 20 years, every shoe company has been trying to get skaters to buy $100 shoes. It ain't gonna happen. Like,
yeah, it's that one I saw, and I remember that. Like, I saw people were excited on that, and I was like, that shoe sucked.
Oh yeah, like, it looks insane.
Yeah, Yeah.
Cool stash pocket. But, I mean...
Yeah.
It was Muska at the time when like Muska could do no wrong.
Pretty much. Yeah. And that's that same thing of like, in the way that I mythologize Gons. A couple years later, people mythologized, Hensley, and then Markovich, and then Mike Carroll, and then Tom Penny. And then, like, there's always a dude, like, Ed Muska had that time more than most people, and he parlayed it into, like, really making bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is crazy. Like, he's still set. Like,
yeah, like, Muska wasn't, I was never a big fan, It's not, I never really liked watching handrail skating, and it definitely seemed like very ostentatious, but everybody's got their guy. And I think it's kind of sick. Like, it really, every single year, and this is still true. Like I said, like, I liked Steve Caballero, and then the next year I liked Ray Barbie more.
Right.
I remember I talked to a kid he's probably like 20 now, but I met him when he was like 15, and his favorite skater was P-Rod. But a year later, it was like Mason Silva, because your taste changed so much when you're 15. Like, it's every year is a completely new set of everything.
Oh yeah. Especially now with like the way content's pushed out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Man.
But yeah, I think that's a funny thing. Like, we could think Tom Penny was the best, and you hadn't seen anything of him in like years. Like, I don't think that that's possible now. Like, for us, it was Gino. Like, he had 2 tricks, then you didn't see him for 5 years, and for 5 years, you're like, I wonder what Gino's doing. Like, not fucking skating, but it didn't matter.
So, all right. So I think that's going to wrap it up for this week.
Yeah, cool, man. Right. Definitely.
Mike, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Yeah, it's fun, man.
Yeah,
we
thanks,
should
Mike.
Do it again sometime. I hope you're ready to edit this thing down a little bit.